Hey, it's your buddy Tyler coming at you with a brand new episode. This episode was recorded live during our Friday night stream, where I sat down with my cousin Manny to talk about something we've joked about for years. Why did my dad hate role-playing games?
I wouldn't pay that money for that.
Yeah.
He used to give Manny and Mikey a hard time for loving RPGs, while proudly proclaiming his love for action and arcade games. In this episode, we dive into those memories and try to figure out what was it about role-playing games that just didn't click with Dad. Let's get into it.
Mark and Tyler Esposito, you have just won all of the RPGs that you can handle. You will not be allowed to trade them in for anything else, and you will be watched as you play through the whole thing.
My dad hated role-playing games, and he was quite vocal about this over the years. My dad and I were action, adventure, arcade-style gamers, and Manny and Mikey were known in the family as the role-playing game fanatics. They loved role-playing games, and so there was this sort of playfulness and this playful back and forth where my dad hated role-playing games. He literally did. He couldn't stand turn-based RPGs or anything like JRPG related. It was too slow. It was a little too methodical for him. But Manny and Mikey loved role-playing games, and I really loved watching them play role-playing games. It was fascinating to me because it almost felt like this forbidden thing. In my side of the family, Dad wouldn't buy role-playing games. He didn't encourage it. And yet, Manny and Mikey, they played all these RPGs. And so, Manny, what do you think it was about role-playing games that my dad didn't like? Did he ever sit down with you and tell you why he didn't like role-playing games?
Well, no. If I had to guess, I would say it's... So we referred to you guys as the action gamers, right? You liked action games. And RPGs are generally, they're kind of like static. You just stand around, you swing a sword, see what happens. There's no active attacking and dodging, that you might get in Ninja Gaiden or something like that. So I would think that maybe that was the reason. There's the reaction speed. You don't really need it. There is strategy, probably more so in a good RPG than an action game, but I would think that would be it.
Yeah, I think, he was the 20-something in the 70s when video games were invented, and he just loved, I guess the late 70s. Yeah, he would have been in his early 20s, and that was where he cut his teeth on video games with stuff like Space Invaders and Donkey Kong and, this type of game where it was fast paced. You had to really think on your feet. And I think that when role-playing games started becoming popular, especially within the family, with you guys, it was just way too boring for him to watch. But I think he was missing out, because I think if he really gave it the time of day, he would have seen the value of these really rich stories with these incredible characters and the very nuanced gameplay involving, leveling up and, stats and, making sure you upgraded your characters the right way, to further, traverse through the game.
I think RPGs are best appreciated when you're playing them, not really when you're observing someone else playing them.
Yeah.
You become invested in, there's a significant amount of work that you put into building your, the strength of your party and all that. So, you could dedicate, 3-4 hours and really push to strengthen your team. And, it's a commitment, and you put value into the team. So you see the payoffs when you're able to progress, beat a boss or something like that. And being an observer to that, you probably don't appreciate it as much if you're just casually watching it.
I think if Dad had somebody like you, or maybe if he was a little younger and had an older family member who loved RPGs, sort of guide him through it and experience that with him, I think it would have been a little different. It was all about first impressions, maybe. And his first impressions of RPGs was like, what are these little characters on the screen? They're just kind of walking around, and these random battles. And man, why do these random battles keep interrupting the gameplay? I could almost hear him in my head right now. Like, he hated that aspect of it, and just I think he felt less control, maybe too, over the game, and it was more like that interruption and that repetitious gameplay. It just didn't work for, I guess, the way his mind worked.
He would probably more appreciate modern role playing games, I would think.
Yeah,
I think the remake of Seven is loosely RPG. It's more of, to me, like an action game, action adventure,
yeah.
or an action RPG. But he might have appreciated that more, but just because it's more cinematic.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
But
think
yeah, those old turn based ones, it's too much.
Yeah, I think he would have, you know what? And this is crazy because I got this game actually when I was visiting you guys Christmas of 2007. I went out and got it, but I think Mass Effect, that would have been probably a role-playing game, and he had just passed away months prior to that game's release. But I think that would have been the one to kind of win him over when it came to a true like RPG with a leveling up system and stats and stuff like that. It wasn't a turn-based RPG. It was definitely like action RPG, but I think that game, and I think that's another reason, why, man, that Christmas I got so wrapped up in that game too. I could actually picture myself when I was playing it at your house. I never forget playing Mass Effect in you were living in like the side house at your parents' house, like the little
Yeah,
side,
the
like the
converted garage.
yeah, your dad
Slash
had
apartment.
converted it, the
Yeah.
garage into
Oh, yeah, and I know you played it. You know why? Because I have Mass Effect on my Xbox profile because you played it under my account with the disc. I don't even have the game, but I have a couple of achievements thanks to you.
yeah, I got you some achievements there. That was funny. But yeah, man, I loved playing it. And I think I loved it so much, particularly that season, because I could picture my dad like actually really loving that game. The cinematic storytelling, all the characters. It felt like a movie that you were playing through this big space epic. And yeah, he would have loved that game. That probably would have been the first RPG that he would have really loved, I would think. Like, definitely. What was the first RPG you ever played? How did you get into RPGs?
How did I get into RPGs? Wow. We started with Atari. Didn't really have role playing games on there. But like adventure was maybe the closest thing, an adventure RPG ish. But after that, before NES came around to us, we had a Commodore 64, and there were a lot of RPG style games on there. One in particular we had was called Below the Root, which was, I think it was based on a book series, but the is basically like a bit of a point and click adventure. You could pick like different people to characters to play as, and there were objectives, and you had to go around talk to people and complete little side quests and stuff like that. And then like I'd say like the first real RPG, what I would consider like a JRPG, real RPG.
Yeah.
Probably, I think it's up for debate whether it was Dragon Warrior first or Final Fantasy. One of those two, but certainly I think Final Fantasy would be, the original NES one would be like the first true hard as nails sort of RPG for a kid my age.
Wow. Yeah. Final Fantasy. I mean, what a game to start off on too, because I mean, if that's your first RPG, it's like the king of RPGs, right? Like what a legacy
Yeah, pretty much.
that
Yeah.
series went on to have. And then I remember my first interaction with RPGs was watching Mikey play Dragon Warrior on the NES.
Yeah.
He like was obsessed with, okay, so when we visited when I was 4 years old in 1990, there were two games that Mikey was absolutely obsessed with and he kept going back to, and that was Dragon Warrior and Shadowgate.
Shadowgate.
And Shadowgate's sort of an RPG too, kind of more of like a text-based, a graphic novel kind of adventure style RPG. I guess there's no leveling up in there, but I remember watching the Dragon Warrior screen and just as a little kid, like I'm talking 4 years old, being so mesmerized by what Mikey was doing because it was like all gibberish to me. Like I didn't understand what was going on. Like it was so foreign, the style of gameplay and everything. But yet Mikey was doing stuff, and he was, I guess he was learning how to read because of role playing games.
Yeah, that's true. The RPG. I advocate for RPGs, especially and games. Even for our own kids, is like there's a lot of text in there. It forces you to read if you really want to understand what's happening. And he certainly, it certainly helped him learn to read because he was pushing through Dragon Warrior probably like when he was 3 years old or 4 years old or something like that before he really started reading, or at least like the level of reading you needed for that was beyond where he was at that age. So it certainly helped. And that's funny. Him and Dragon Warrior, even probably you said that like you watch and you'd be mesmerized. And I have the same, to this day, I have the same sort of mesmerizing that happens when he shows me Final Fantasy 11 or 14. He's like, he shows me, I'm like, I have no idea what's happening here. It's like, the MMO versions of the game. It's just as mystifying to me as Dragon Warrior was to you.
Yeah. And, Mikey to this day, those of you watching, in the chat, Mikey to this day is like, he loves those kind of RPGs, MMO RPGs is like something that he became very involved in.
Yeah.
And maybe we can have him on the show sometime talking about some cool stuff that, MMOs, did for him, but, I'll let him talk about that. But, yeah, I mean, watching you guys play RPGs was sort of a mesmerizing thing for me. And it was so funny because like I'd come back home from after a trip visiting you guys, and I would be so interested in these role-playing games that I saw you guys playing. But my dad always he kind of, he scoffed at it. He didn't really think much of it. He did RPGs, he'd say. Oh, come on. Like those are the worst. RPGs lame. Like it became a thing to make fun of in our house. So we like actively made fun of role-playing games. Like that they were the worst type of video game you could play. And I remember it got to a point where you actually did a video with Mikey where the two of you are sitting on your living room couch and you both are going through video games, and you're going to send us this tape basically that showcases a bunch of Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo games that you guys had that we didn't. And it gets to a point in the tape where you make fun of us for hating RPGs by pulling out this thing where you're like, and you read it so smugly too. You're like, oh, by the way, this just in, you have won an award, Mark and Tyler, or Uncle Mark and Tyler. I can't remember exactly how you said it. And you say something like, you have won all the role-playing games you can handle. And, and guess what? Also, Manny and Mikey have won something. They've won all the action games, and they can play as many RPGs as they want. Like, you got real clever and funny with it as a kid. And what made you do that? Like, if you think back to that time and when you did that, or when you thought of that, funny thing to do on camera, like what was going through your head?
It was kind of like a jab, trying to impress on you guys, like you have to deal with these RPGs now and you'll learn to love them. Although I don't know what the flip side of that with us receiving the action games means. I would argue that, we're getting punished just as much as you guys are getting punished. But I don't know. I can't really recall if there was an intention behind it or a sentiment that I was trying to get across. But yeah, I certainly remember. I think I remember it mostly because you have clips of it that you play every now and then in the videos. But yeah, like I do think it was playful how we would poke fun at each other for, especially you guys for RPGs. Not now you're stuck with these RPGs.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny how there was this back and forth, and then at some point, I actually I wrote, and I didn't write. I mean, I sent you guys another tape, like we did it. We and see that's the thing, guys. You got to remember back then we didn't have the internet, so we literally couldn't do anything like this. Yet alone like this, sort of live streaming. But like we didn't even have email back then, so we would send VHS tapes back and forth to each other with these like gameplay videos, and we would have fun on camera showcasing our games and stuff. And there was one I sent back to you after that tape, after we got it in the mail and I watched it and saw that funny prank you did. um I ended up saying on camera in this response video, like, oh, and by the way, Manny, you can take all your RPGs and do with whatever you want. It's like I'm kind of like getting back at you. I think all of a sudden I remembered what you had said, and I wanted to get a quick jab at. It's just so funny.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there was like I remember a lot of the intros of the tapes with the power team and all that, and little jabs here and there about I don't know, let's argument's sake, Sega versus Nintendo, which we were a Nintendo fanboy household and you guys are Sega fanboys, obviously inferior to us in every way.
Them's fighting words, even in 2025.
Yes, yes. The war goes on. But yeah, it was always, I feel like I would remember it. We would do our response video. And I think more than that, more than just like the intros where we had the banter and playfully attacked one another. It was about the selection of games too, to kind of showcase why, say, one platform was better than another, or why RPGs were better than, action games.
I find it funny that years later, I started really loving role playing games, specifically with Super Mario RPG. That was my first role playing game, or at least turn based role playing game. That was my first turn based role playing game. And Secret of Mana before that. I had a lot of influences from my buddy Brian, Brian, and then of course you guys. And so slowly but surely, I started really getting into role playing games, to the point where by the time PlayStation rolled around and Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete came out, that became one of my favorite games of all time. And it just it really opened up another doorway of role playing games, and I became a huge fan. And it was this weird thing where so much of my likes in video games, but also movies and music, really it was modeled after my dad. He introduced me to so many things that I also really liked. I really started feeling my own sense of like identity within video games through role playing games, because I was like, you know what? It's okay that dad doesn't like role playing games. I do, and that's fine. And so to this day, I still love role playing games. In fact, I probably play role playing games more often than I do other style games. I really love the kind of go at your own pace, play a little bit every night kind of vibe. Life is so fast paced these days with a family and work. And it's like, I really like role playing games now that I'm approaching middle age here. And I don't know. What do you think?
You know what?
You've always loved role playing games. Do you like them even more now?
Well, the irony is that I have shifted away from role-playing games and embrace
There you
action
go.
games now. I love the idea of an RPG, but just I never have enough of consecutive time to really get into one. And even if I do, like if I have a good night, make decent progress, chances are I will not pick it up the next night, or maybe a week will pass by and I'll forget what I was doing and I'll just lose interest. So I can't tell you how many RPGs I've started that I've maybe never played before. Like I'm playing them for the first time and I just don't get through them. But I will always replay ones I've done already because I know what to do. I know what the stories are, so I can do that in a more fragmented approach.
That's really funny. That's so funny how the script has been flipped
Yeah.
between us and our gameplay style these days. And That's so funny. I wonder if Dad were still here today, if things would have changed for him too. If maybe he would really enjoy role-playing games these days. I don't know.
It's like dogs and cats living together in mass hysteria.
Man, that was such a fun trip down memory lane. Talking with Manny about Dad's so-called hatred of role-playing games reminded me that more than anything, he just loved poking fun and stirring the pot with his nephews. It wasn't about disliking the games themselves, it was about creating moments, making memories, and sharing laughs that would stick with us forever. This episode was recorded live on the My Retro Life podcast, which we stream every Friday night at 9 p.m. Central, excluding holidays. We'd love for you to join us live and be part of the conversation. And if you want to hear the full uncut version of this episode, it's available exclusively for our patrons on Patreon and through YouTube memberships. Thanks so much for hanging with us, guys. See you next time.